It's great to see so many familiar faces back in the same room together. This is one big family. We're going to have a nice time tonight. Tonight we're here to celebrate a man who's had a profound impact on the lives of many of the people in this room. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brandon Steinmetz, and I was fortunate to be able to wrestle for Coach Armelli during his years as head wrestling coach at Lake Catholic High School. Many of the people here tonight know Tim Armelli as their coach, their teacher, or as a dear friend. And on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank the entire Armelli family for being here with us this evening to share in the special honor of their husband, father, son, and brother Tim. Many have called him an ambassador to the sport of wrestling. Throughout his exceptional 33-year coaching career, Armelli has achieved incomparable success as an assistant head wrestling coach at both Lake Catholic and Chardon High School. Armelli has presided over 6 individual state champions, 30 state place winners, 54 state qualifiers, and 10 collegiate All-Americans. As head wrestling coach at Lake Catholic, Armelli's teams captured the Division II state championship in 1989, the team runner-up in 1993, and the Division II dual meet championship in 1997. His teams won 4 district championships, 5 sectional championships, and 8 conference championships. Armelli has been named Coach of the Year 12 times by various leagues, newspapers, and associations. He is the founder of many local area USA wrestling clubs and has also presided as the league's coordinator. He has also coached at the national level with the Ohio Cadet Freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling teams. But the measure of this fine man runs much deeper than just these highlights. I'd like to share a quote with you that inspired me while I was writing this speech called The Essence of Success. Success is the person who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of young people, who leaves the world a better place than they found it, who never lacks an appreciation for the world's beauty, who has never failed to look for the best in others or give the best of themselves. Coach Armelli has always led by example on and off the wrestling mat. He's lived his life by 3 cornerstone principles: accountability, respect, and respect for oneself and others, and integrity. Through his unique ability to inspire and motivate, he has helped others achieve what might have otherwise never been possible. By his compassion shown to all individuals, his contagious enthusiasm, and his consistent selfless actions, Coach Armelli has been a role model and mentor to many. His influence has touched the lives of thousands and lives on in us today. I could not think of a person more deserving to be inducted in the Ohio High School Wrestling Hall of Fame. I'm proud to call him my coach and my friend. Now let's take a look back and remember some of the special memories that have defined this great man.
Crying.
Hang your glory on the wall. There comes a time when castles fall. now you're home. Without the gold, without the crown. This is where you've always been. You had to lose so you could win. Rise above your troubles while you can. Now you can love, now you can lose, now you can choose. That's the measure of a man.
Now I'd like to please ask Dale Caprosi to come up. For those of you who don't know Dale, Dale was the co-captain of the 1989 Lake Catholic State Championship Wrestling team. After Vic Voinovich's critical win against Andrew Carson head-to-head against Kenston in the only finals match, Dale went on to wrestle at the 160-pound title match and clinched the state title at 160 pounds for both himself and Lake Catholic with his last seconds takedown over his opponent. Dale went on to become a two-time All-American at John Carroll University. He is currently the Senior Vice President of Oswald Insurance Company and serves as a member on many local area boards and associations in Northeastern Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, Dale Caprosi.
I was not expecting to have to follow up that, so we'll do my best to read what I wrote this afternoon around 2 o'clock. Just like I did most of my homework. On behalf of Brandon Steinmetz, myself, Steve Galeazzo, JJ Husko, and a number of other people, Danny Brozak, and other guys that I apologize if I forgot your name. Thank you for being here tonight. Certainly, the true thanks goes to Brandon Steinmetz. He did an amazing job of leading a great group of guys to make this event happen. So, Thank you, Brandon. That said, Brandon asked me to say a few words, so I'll be as brief as I can, my comments. So, it's interesting. So I ran into Mr. Frito on the way in here, who I always think is a comical person, and he says something about how he just timing is everything. And so I wrote most of what I have to say about timing, right? So much of life success is about timing, just being in the right place at the right time. And so I can imagine a ton of guys in this room, if not all of us, can look back at certain things in our life and say, man, I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time, and good things happen. And a couple examples, Timmy Bank, myself, Timmy Connors, Brandon, a number of us guys kind of fall out of wrestling into sales, probably because we're just used to rejection and figure out a way to get through it. But the good things that happen in sales, usually it's about timing. You just happen to make a phone call on the right person at the right time, and good things happen. Most of you know me will say that if not for my wife, I would probably be living in a van down by the river, right? I was in the right place, literally, at the right time to meet my wife. I was in a bar called The Right Place in the Hills, and I met my wife. And it just happened to be timing, and so good things happen. So I can also say the years from 1985 to 1989, I was in the right place at the right time. I happened to be able to spend most of my time with Tim Armelli. And I'm very fortunate for that, and much of tonight is about that. So the second part of success is about what you do with timing, and I think that's where Tim Armelli comes in. And Tim taught all of us the importance of hard work, dedication, commitment to a goal, teamwork, and probably most importantly, and the thing that I try to emphasize with my kids, is humility. I mean, there's not a more humble person than Tim Armelli, and so humility is a big part of who Tim Armelli is, and those are all great life lessons that we all were fortunate enough to learn and live from Tim Armelli. Life brings tons of decision points, some of them easier than others. But wrestling and Tim Armelli's influence on my life, as well as everybody here, has always been a great compass to help me make the right decision when those things come up. And so I'm very proud, just like Brandon and everybody in here, to call Tim a friend, to have had him for a coach, and to have had his influence in our lives. So it's exciting. So with that, it brings me to the reason we're all here. Honoring a man whose life's work has impacted the lives of so many young men and the wrestling community. The process of being inducted in the Hall of Fame, the Ohio Wrestling Coaches Hall of Fame, requires several letters of recommendation. I know all of us here could probably write a letter of recommendation, albeit some of those letters may be more damaging than helpful, but we could all write a letter on Tim's behalf. I might write a few about pictures he has right now. So the following individuals, and thanks to with no less importance than anything that Brandon and I have done here tonight, Todd Haverdale. I mean, Todd called me a few months back to ask me if I would write a letter for Tim. Certainly, it was an easy decision, obviously. And said, hey, look, there's some other people in the Hall of Fame, and Armel needs to be there as well, so would you write a letter? So I wrote a letter, and the following individuals also wrote a letter, and I'll just very briefly, if you wouldn't mind, just either raise your hand or stand up. Frito won't stand up because he's afraid. He doesn't like to do that sort of thing. And so the first person wrote a letter, Brian Frito, is a former two-time Lake Catholic State Place winner, and he's also a co-captain of the team. He was also the father of 3 wonderful children, and luckily enough to have a wonderful wife, Tanya. So, Todd Haverdale, who is I just learned tonight, Todd has been recognized as the Division I Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Todd. For those of you who don't know Todd, you're obviously not paying attention to Flow or wrestling at all, but Todd is the head coach of the nationally ranked Brecksville wrestling program. Also the father of 3 girls, and also a Lake Catholic State champion. Charlie Becks. I am so excited to see Charlie Becks. Where are you at, Charlie? Raise your hand. That's great. Charlie Becks is living in Chicago. Charlie Becks is probably, certainly, if I would, I don't think anybody would argue, is one of the most successful wrestlers that come out of Lake Catholic. He was a runner-up for the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Division I NCAA finals. He was also a Lake Catholic state champion, and I learned he just recently completed a triathlon, which I did not. You did an Ironman? Yeah, I didn't do that either. Maybe next year. Somebody give me a Budweiser.
So did Brett. Brett, too.
Brett did one, too?
Yeah.
Those Beck's kids are always trying not to. I mean, seriously. This is really what it boils down to. They're like, yeah, we're so much better than everybody else. Coach Armelli. Yeah, we're not going to be mediocre. We're going to be the best. We're going to do the triathlon. Anyway, all right. Staying focused. Sam DeVito. Sam DeVito is the father of a former Lake Catholic student, Phil DeVito. Many of you are familiar with Sam through Tim's work on Phil's foundation, more to follow on Sam DeVito. And then Bob Sater, who I knew Bob, but Bob was the former wrestling coach at Perry High School. And I think it's interesting that while Bob was at Perry, he coached against Tim, and he also coached alongside of Tim. So, Bob's currently, could not be here with us tonight. He's currently coaching wrestling in South Carolina, but sends his best wishes. So, enough said by me. With that said, Sam DeVito has a few words to say, and so we're going to let Sam take the mic for a few minutes. So, Sam, please come on up. I'll do my best.
Thank you. I'd first like to start off by thanking Tim, Terry, Brian, and Dan for opening up your home and your hearts to me and my family. I also want to thank Todd Haverdale for asking me to contribute and write a letter of recommendation for Tim. Todd, that's a gutsy move. To ask an old guy from Collinwood to write a letter. Thank God for spell check and that little green line on Word. To forget about it, the uses, it just picks it all up. And also, Brendan, thank you for a big, huge part of this. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Before reading the letter that I sent, you guys asked me to read the letter that I sent. I did have the opportunity to coach with Tim. But mine is more about Tim the man. But before I read that, there's something I just have to know. Many of you guys out there have witnessed Coach Armelli going off. When he goes off, watch out. He is up one side of you and down the other before you know what has happened. Spit is flying, hands are flailing. He rattles off 1,000 words, which are all on target. Tim, I need to know how the hell you did that without one swear word in 1,000 words. Please tell us how you did it. It's got to be from the guy I was sitting next to. The letter that I wrote wasn't very hard to do. It's going to be very hard to read. Well, here's my letter. And remember, this is a letter, it's not a speech. It's the letter I wrote to the board of the Ohio High School Coaches Wrestling Hall of Fame, to whom it may concern. Coach Tim Armelli deserves to be in the Ohio Coaches Hall of Fame for so many reasons, beyond his successful wrestling and, of course, his football coaching. I would like to name a few and share my history with Tim. In 1993, I volunteered to coach football at Lake Catholic High School, where my son was starting his freshman year. With my previous experience of coaching middle school in Willoughby East Lake School System, and many years of coaching youth football, baseball, and CYO basketball, it was a way for me to be involved in my son's school and be able to do something I dearly loved. I thought it would be a win-win situation for me and my son. As it turned out, it's a win-win for thousands of people. Tim was the head coach of the freshman football team at Lake Catholic. During the first few days of practice, I noticed something special about this man. Tim's drive, his enthusiasm, and his commitment to care and teach were incredibly inspiring. Our demeanors and our philosophies were very similar, which made for a successful and fun coaching experience and the beginning of a great friendship. Tim always knew what was important. Even though he pushed for every player to do his best and make the right choices, his commitment of knowing what was important is what I admired him the most. He is a master of getting the most out of athletes and all those that surround him. I had the pleasure of coaching with Mr. Armelli for several years at Lake Catholic. Remember, this is the letter I wrote. I can tell you about his teaching and his coaching abilities, but I will leave that to others. You need to know what this man has done for so many athletes, students, parents, other coaches, my family, and myself. The end of the school year in 1995, my son Philip was diagnosed with a recurring brain tumor. The tumor was spreading and took my son's vision. Philip missed most of his junior year at Lake and came back for his senior year and was able to graduate his class in 1997. Mr. Armelli knew Phil, but he never coached or taught Phil at Lake Catholic. During these very trying times, Tim was always positive. He would talk to Phil, and he would motivate him and myself. I remember one night, Tim Armelli and Father Polito took Philip to hear Christopher Reeves in downtown Cleveland. It was a very motivating night for my son, who was during his own challenges of battling cancer and finishing high school without his eyesight. In December of 1997, Philip passed away. Tim was there for me and my family. He loved my son for many reasons, and I suspect that Philip was able to motivate Tim because Philip always had a smile on his face and he never complained about the ordeal he was going through. Like Tim, my son knew what was important. During Philip's years at Lake, the students, teachers, staff prayed, helped Philip in many ways. Tim approached me about a memorial scholarship in Philip's name. I thought it was a great idea, a way of giving back to the school and the community. The scholarship started, in 1998, and we could probably say we have given over $90,000 in scholarships to students at Lake Catholic in Philip's memory. In 2008, of course, Coach Armelli always takes it a step further. In 2008, Tim Armelli founded the Philip DeVito Foundation. We continue to fund a scholarship at Lake Catholic, but we also help by financially supporting family and children of those who are in need and have suffered a hardship. In the short 5 years as a foundation, we have donated over $75,000 directly to those in need, over and above the scholarships. Tim is the president of the foundation and motivates the board members to continue the mission of the foundation. In addition to his presidential duties, coaching and teaching, Tim is a huge supporter and gives his time to the Deepwood Center. When Tim made the decision to teach at Chardon and leave Lake Catholic, it was a very hard choice. It was a very hard choice to make, but he did it for his family. During the tragedy at Chardon, Mr. Armelli was there in the cafeteria. He reacted by getting children to safety, the students to safety, and returning to help to care for the victims. This incident affected so many, and it affected Tim in many ways. He and I have talked many times about that day, and I know so many teachers, students, and others were going to Mr. Armelli for his inspiration, his support, and his motivation. His positive attitude, his impact, thousands of lives for the better. Tim has his own personal struggles with this horrific event, but I know he continues to help others cope because he knows what's important. Tim Armelli is a kind, passionate, caring, and very giving man. He's a great leader, and as all you here know, an unbelievable coach. And most important, a wonderful human being that knows what is important. Tim, I love you, and thank you for everything.
Okay, I'd like to ask JJ to come up real quick. Coach, we'd like to, I'm sorry, we didn't have an opportunity to read all the letters tonight. So what we did was work on putting together a binder that contains all the letters as well as some additional memories that were written on behalf of your Hall of Fame induction, and we'd like to present you with this tonight. Again, I'd like to thank all the gentlemen that wrote letters on behalf of the nomination, and JJ for putting the award together tonight. That was great. Also, Dan Ambrosiak for the video presentation. Coach, notice there's no locking closets in this room. I'm getting a little bit smarter as I get older.
Danny locked in my closet. He didn't really lock it.
Now I'd like to ask Dan Single to please come up. Dan was the co-captain of the 1988 Lake Catholic wrestling team and placed fourth at the state tournament. He went on to wrestle as a four-year starter at John Carroll University and was an OAC champ and national qualifier. While at John Carroll, Dan earned his undergraduate degree in biology and physics. Dan went on to earn his medical degree at the University of Cincinnati and is currently a practicing orthopedic surgeon at Waccamaw Hospital in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Single.
So first, I just want to say thanks to Brandon and Todd and Mr. DeVito, everybody else who made tonight happen. I think Todd Haverdill said it in one of the newspaper articles. It's kind of surprising that this hasn't happened earlier, I think. Everybody in this room kind of knows Tim and Coach Armelli and what he means to all of us. And, what a great night, Personally, I think this is awesome. I mean, I don't get home that often, and in one room I have pretty much most of the people that have, stood out in my life. And, I'm sure it's the same for Coach. And, when I heard about tonight, through Brandon's email, I kind of mentioned to him, he said that there was going to be some people talking. I said, if you don't have anybody to talk, I'd be more than happy to say a few words.
Mention that.
Quite frankly, I'm not the most successful person ever to, step on the mat at Lake Catholic. Clearly, my wrestling career really didn't amount to all that much, comparatively speaking. But I think that, in a way, I'm kind of representative more of the bulk of the people that kind of went through the program. Most of the people that Coach, interacted with didn't go on and, have great wrestling careers. But as you can look around the room tonight, most of us are very successful in life, And that's really, I think, kind of the true measure of him, is that he's had such an impact. And again, like Mr. DeVito said very eloquently in his letter to the State High School Wrestling Hall of Fame, he's had such a huge impact on so many people. And I know right now Coach is dying a little bit because he doesn't like this. He's a very humble guy. And I asked him as I sat down next to him what he's thinking, and he's a very humble guy, but he needs to realize, I think, what he means to people. And it gave me an opportunity when Brandon let me, told me I could say a couple of words. It brought back so many great memories. Things that you kind of tuck away and you don't think about all that often because you're busy living life. You have responsibilities at work and wives and kids and the whole 9 yards, and you don't really pull these memories out that often. And it was a great couple of weeks for me, thinking back to all the great times I had with some of the guys in the room here and with Coach. And, I'm trying to collect my thoughts as to what exactly am I going to say. And, I watch a lot of movies and things like that, and there were a couple of themes that kind of kept coming back to me. And the first one, and I think it's kind of obvious, is tonight is very similar to, a movie called Mr. Holland's Opus, where, there's a teacher, played by Richard Dreyfuss, who is a music teacher in a high school setting, and he's always had this dream of writing this concerto or this musical score his whole life. And, he takes a job to support his family, teaching high school music, and, he spends his whole life essentially putting off his own dreams and interacting with children and youngsters at a very kind of crucial time in their lives. And it's towards the end of the movie where they have a reception for him because he's retiring, and a lot of his students come back. And it's during that part of the movie that they actually play the piece of music that he's written, and it's the first time it's ever played. And you kind of come to realize that, and I think he does too, that it's not so much the notes that are on the piece of paper, but it's the people that are playing them. And I think that with Coach, even though he's been very successful, coaching wrestlers, it's not the wins and the losses and the numbers of guys that have gone on and wrestled for him and been successful at the college ranks or in the high school ranks. It's what they've done with their lives and how successful they are as husbands and fathers and out in the real world. And, I can look to a few people in my life that have made huge impacts on me. My parents are here tonight. Clearly they've probably made the biggest impact on me. And when they heard about this, immediately they asked if they could come. And I called Brandon up. I said, can parents come to this thing? And Mom and Dad really want to be here. And I think that speaks a lot because, as a parent now, and I have little kids, I pray that someday when I drop them off at school, there's a guy like Tim Armelli on the other end, waiting to accept them with open arms to kind of pick up where they leave off. And that's exactly what he does. Every day of his life is when, the parents in this room or the people in this room that kind of know him, he doesn't phone it in. Every day of his life, he gets up and he tries to make a difference in people's lives. And, for me, he was that guy. When you think about when he interacts with us, we're 14 to 18 years old, and your friends are kind of becoming a bigger influence in your lives, and you're away from mom and dad a little bit, and maybe making some bad decisions here and there. And, Coach was always kind of there to kind of keep you on the straight and narrow and kind of show you what was important in life. And, I pray, like I said, that I have somebody like that for my kids when they get older. And, like I said, I got to know him when I was a freshman because he was coaching the freshman team with Coach Petrus this year tonight. And we used to roll the mats out in the cafeteria at Lake Catholic. And, a lot of great memories from that year. I lost my first wrestle off that year to kid Bob Bayer, and I really could have used Coach that night when I went home and told my mom, because I think she had a nervous breakdown, thinking I'd never wrestle again. But I didn't do real well my freshman year, my sophomore year, but my junior year, I was starting to see some of the fruits of my labors. I was getting out on the varsity mat for the first time, and I was starting to win some matches. And one moment that kind of stood out to me in all this, and I don't know if maybe I told Coach about this, but we were hosting St. Ignatius up at Lake Catholic, and it was a cold night in February, and I'd been winning some matches and feeling pretty good about myself. And I was going to wrestle this kid who was a sophomore, and it's a home crowd. Your parents are there, your friends. And I went on the mat, and about 2.5 minutes later, it was over. I got creamed, and this kid completely dismantled me, and it was a very embarrassing moment. I can remember it being one of the few times in my life where, things didn't go the way I thought they were gonna. I'd been working real hard, and I cared a lot about what I was doing, and the kid killed me. And as I kind of scraped myself up off the mat and kind of walked back over to the corner, he pulled me aside, and he kind of told me this. He said, Dan, you're way up here. He goes, and everybody else that you're going to wrestle are way down here. And I kind of looked at him like, what the hell are you talking about? This kid just killed me. And he goes, but that kid, Mike Buddy, he's way up here. And, it was the right thing to say at the right moment, because, in a matter of seconds, he kind of figured out how to get through to me. He saw how dejected I was, and, how much it meant to me that I lost this match, and, I think to myself, what if he had just kind of let me saunter back to the bench, or, he reamed me out, but he didn't. He figured out in that moment, what to say to me, how to say it, and, how to say it. Like he told me that, and I looked him in the eye, and when he said that, he kind of had that little glint in his eye, and his mustache kind of curled up into a little smirk. And, that is what we call a teachable moment. That moment right there had a huge impact because, I kind of, it completely cleared my headspace. I felt differently about it. I was like, fine. I'll get back to work Monday morning. I'll go back in and get back on the mat and go back to work. And I didn't let it bother me. And when you're 16 years old, and get your butt kicked in front of everybody, and your mom and dad are there, and all your friends, and the countless number of girlfriends I had at the time were sitting in the stand. It was a bad moment. You kind of learn. What's his name? All Banco's boyfriends. But anyways, you kind of learn at 16. That's a big deal. But you kind of learn later on in life as you kind of keep living that the beats that you take, are a hell of a lot bigger than losing a wrestling match in the middle of the gym when you're 16 years old. But you learn in that moment that you have two choices. You can kind of give in, or you can pick yourself up and dust yourself off and go back to work. And I think we all realize that, otherwise we wouldn't be in this room tonight. That to me, it speaks volumes, and I think to myself too, how many times that scenario probably played out in one way or another for other people. If it happened to me, I'm sure it happened to everybody else in this room in, some way, shape, or form. So, and then the other part of this talk, and I kind of hope I get through it, but the other kind of, theme that kept coming up was, It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life, again, is a movie about a guy in a small town that has always wanted to get out of that town and do big things with his life. But, at very critical moments in his life when he seems that he can get away, somebody in town, a friend or a family member, has a more pressing need. And, this man, George Bailey, because he's an ethical guy and a moral guy, and, he does the right thing. And he always puts his own desires ahead of other people's desires rather ahead of his own. And, and I think a lot about Tim that way too, because, for years, when I talk about him, and I haven't really connected with him that much, since I left Lake Catholic. I think in the past couple years, we've reconnected out at the National Wrestling Tournament. I've had the privilege of kind of hanging out with him, and we room together and we talk about things. But, he's the same guy that he's always been. He hasn't changed a bit. He's the same guy that I remember when I was 18 years old. And, I would always kind of explain to people, when they talk about it, when I talk about him, I'm going to see my old wrestling coach, we're going to go out to this tournament. I'd say, he's just one in a million. He's always upbeat. Guy's always got a smile on his face. He's always kind. He's just a great guy. And I would always conclude that talk, or that little, kind of description of him as saying, I don't think the man's ever had a bad day in his life. And I know that's not true. I moved away a couple years ago. And I still listen to Cleveland radio, because I'm a hometown guy. And I had the radio on one morning when I was working out, and they broke in and told this terrible story about what was going on at Chardon High School. It's a lot harder than I thought it'd be, but immediately my thoughts went to him, and to my friend Nick Saltino, who's in the room tonight, because I know both of them are there, and if there were ever two people that I know that would run towards a tragedy like that, it'd be the two of them. And I was very upset. I was very upset because I didn't know what was going on, and I started texting him and called him a couple times, and he was kind enough to get back to me a couple hours later and let me know that he was okay, and that Nick was okay too. And immediately in that moment of relief, when I kind of, could, collect myself, my immediate thought was, what? How lucky that community is that he's there right now. If there was ever a person that I can point to in my life that should be there and needed to be there, it was Tim Armelli, because as Mr. DeVito kind of said, and I don't know much about it. I don't know what type of resource he was, but I'm sure he was a great resource, and it sounds like he was. But if they ever needed a guy like him there, or if there ever needed to be a guy like Tim Armelli at a spot like that, he needed to be the guy. And I don't know how much he talks about it. I don't know how much, how deeply it's affected him. I'm sure it has, but all I know is, sort of like at the end of the movie where George Bailey kind of figures out at the end that, the community's there for him. I know that if he ever needs somebody to pick him up, or say a kind word, or take his mind off of things, that there's a room full of people here now, and probably hundreds more that couldn't be here tonight, that not only would welcome that phone call, but would be honored to have it and get that phone call. And I'd be one of those guys. But, kind of in conclusion, I want to tell him, that I love him and that this is very well deserved. And I'd also like to thank and honor a couple other people, that probably are getting unsung a little bit, but his family, Terry and Danny and Brian, again, as a parent now and realizing the time constraints that we all have with our jobs and with our families, how hard it must have been all those times that he was away and, Dad wasn't at home or your husband wasn't at home because he was spending time with us. And I think that, quite frankly, this honor is as much theirs as it is his. They're getting inducted right along with him. And I just want to say thank you to Mrs. Armelli and Danny and Brian. And thank you for sharing him with us all these years. So that's it.
What do you guys think about this drawing that I just kind of doodled? couldn't bring myself to not draw on the mustache. Had to have it on there. One gentleman couldn't be with us tonight. We wanted to make sure voices were represented from Chardon High School. Coach, as much as you mean to Lake Catholic, I know you mean just as much to Chardon. Bob Francis was the former athletic director at Chardon High School and is assistant middle school coach along with Coach Armelli now at Chardon. Bob couldn't be here tonight because he's on a family vacation. He wishes you well, he sends his congratulations, and he wrote a letter that he requested could be read tonight. So on behalf of Bob Francis, we've asked Nick Salatino, who's the head wrestling coach at Chardon High School currently, to read that letter. Nick?
First of all, I'd like to say this is an honor to speak for Bob and to Tim, because these are two guys that I deeply respect. And here's Bob's letter. Due to a family trip, I'm not able to attend the January 4th evening to honor Coach Armelli. However, I wanted to pass on a few thoughts that hopefully could be shared with the group and Coach Armelli on that Saturday evening. I've been fortunate to coach middle school wrestling with Coach Armelli the past several years. I am by no means an expert wrestling coach, so I consider it a privilege to be able to learn by working with him on a daily basis. I am not sure if the kids that we coach in 7th and 8th grade fully understand how fortunate they are to learn the lessons of the sport and life in general from Coach Armelli. My suspicions, like a lot of things in life, it won't hit them until they are a little older. I could go on and on about how much wrestling I have learned from him, but I just wanted to share 2 items. First of all, I learned from Coach Armelli that it is important to talk to every wrestler when they come off the mat, win or lose. Regardless of the outcome of the match, the wrestler needs to hear something he can improve on and something he did well. The other important coaching point I learned from Coach Armelli is that the mindset that hard work is a reward and that you must prime the pump through the hard work to see those results. I've heard prime the pump. Most coaches use extra push-ups, running, etc. as punishments. However, a coach's philosophy that hard work is a reward fits into the teaching that hard work will get you the results that you desire. It's amazing to see how the kids, even at the middle school age, begin to buy into this philosophy. At the start of our season, when we have our first competition, such as a relay race, the kids are amazed when coach tells the winning team that they get the extra 25 push-ups or they get to run the extra sprints. After a few weeks, you begin to notice that the kids will be doing the extra push-ups or other exercises while waiting for their next turn. We live in a time when kids and many adults need and expect instant gratification and results. I cannot think of too many life lessons more important for our kids to hear than Coach's prime the pump speech. By the time they get to me, it's boring. You've already heard it. I'd like to wrap up by including a few other tidbits in no certain order from working and coaching with Tim over the years. He has always been a teacher and a coach who can get along with all types of students and athletes. Because of his people skills, Coach can get along with the kids who love athletics, the troubled kids, and even those in between. I'm pretty confident that the Chardon High School office is aware of Tim's skills in that area. It is by no accident that kids who need to connect with an adult or need somebody to maybe try a little different way will end up in Tim's class. Over the years, we have all been amazed how no matter where a person goes, the chances of running into somebody who knows Coach Armelli are high. It's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You can't go anywhere without finding. We actually tried a few times and it didn't work. Whether it's on scouting for a football game in some random little stadium in Ohio, or on vacation somewhere in the USA, wearing something with the script Chardon on it means that there is a good chance a conversation might start up that includes the line, "So you know Coach Armelli." Coach has a way of making a positive out of a negative. A great example of this is football scouting. Most football coaches look at scouting as a necessary evil of the job. However, Coach Armelli's attitude towards this makes it not only more productive, but you would even say fun. He always finds a way to include a food trip into the night, so anybody who has ever scouted with him surely knows about the DePompe's burger. The other coaches are surely more likely to not only go scouting, but also be more productive given Coach's leadership. I previously mentioned Coach's excellent people skills. One of his skills in this area include being able to communicate a decision to a kid that might not necessarily like, but make it sound like it's a good thing for them. For example, might have to tell a kid that he cannot wrestle off because he missed practice for an unexcused reason, So Coach may word this in a way that still communicates the truth, but does it in a way that doesn't put people on the defensive. It all has to do with his excellent command of working, tone, and body language when speaking to people. Lastly, whether it's football, wrestling, or education in general, I consider myself fortunate to have been able to work with Coach over the years. In the fall, I read a book called The Butterfly Effect. It's a short but powerful book that probably takes about 20 minutes to read. I highly recommend it. In any case, the book is based on a scientific principle that states that a butterfly in one part of the world can flap its wings, setting air molecules in motion. These in turn can bump into other air molecules, setting them into action. This action can continue on and on until possibly setting off a major weather event on the other side of the world. It then goes on to discuss how this principle can be applied to human actions. We never fully understand the full impact of the words, of our words and actions. We never fully understand how one act of kindness, one act of compassion, one lesson in hard work can continue to influence others. The molecules that Coach has set in motion in his career will be felt for a long time to come all over the world. Again, I'm sorry that I cannot be there tonight, but I'm sure it's a beautiful day there in Chardon, Ohio. Sincerely and thank you, Bob Francis.
Okay, we're getting close here. Before we move on to the less serious portion of the night, I'd like to bring up Coach's two sons, Dan and Brian Armelli.
All right, I'm Brian. Some of you remember me when I was about, and maybe people from Chardon know me when I was, and my brother Dan, who wore the Clemson tie, and doesn't cut his hair. You're lucky he shaved last week, so we're doing okay. But first I want to thank everyone who made this day possible for my dad. Brandon Steinmetz, Todd Haverdill, Dale Caprosi, Charlie Beck, Sam DeVito, Brian Ferrito, Bob Sater, JJ Husko, Dan Ambrosiak. Little tidbit, he's named after Dan Ambrosiak. Dan Stingle and the entire Cook family for allowing us to share this day with the Jim Cook tournament. I will share a little bit, as kind of Dan Single talked about, Dad being away from the home. I actually talked with Brandon about this today at the tournament. Going over when he won states, he jumped on my dad and then hopped over a bike rack and went to go give his parents a hug. And he asked me, how do you remember that? I didn't tell him this, but in my head, all you in the room, that's part of my childhood, is being with all of you. And so many great memories that come from seeing every one of you walk through that door today. I'm glad I got to share that with you guys, and I'm glad to see you guys all here. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity of coming and honoring my dad with this great accomplishment. And without further ado, we'd like to present this plaque to my dad, Coach Tim Armelli, into the induction into the Ohio High School State Wrestling Hall of Fame. This is not going to be easy.
You get a little older, you get a little confused now and then. I'm still confused why like a U has to be after a Q. Like, you don't know it's a Q, you gotta have a little signal, you know. I get confused a little bit. Like, who was like the first guy that decided that a potato was okay to eat? You pull it out of the ground, it's all dirty. I get confused why they call it a pair of pants. It's only one. I know you say it's got two legs, but you don't have a pair of shirts on. It's got two sleeves. But I'll tell you this, what I'm not confused about is that I'm only one spoke of the wheel.